Okay, so one of the points that Ed brought up in his presentation that we've been talking about a little bit regarding our communities, how to build our communities, how to build our culture, and really how to retain our existing students and families. A lot of them coincide with this next presentation regarding professional communication. I would argue, I would assert that we gain or lose more families depending on the way we communicate. That this is probably the biggest obstacle, challenge facing RCA is clear communication. And so we're going to just spend a little bit of time here. I have about 30 minutes to go through just some best practices when communicating. I have a few couple scenarios we can run through and brainstorm together the best way to address them. But I like to begin by going through the 5 C's. And this is not a Regina Chaley unique approach. This is something that's widely accepted regardless of your surroundings and your settings. So the 5 C's of communication: charity, clarity, completeness, concision, and correctness. We talked about in our core values session, we talked about in our prudence session, the first C, which is why I started it being at the top, which is charity. Throughout the past 12 plus years that I've been now with Regina Chaley, I will say that I've never had a family who's reached out to me and maybe reached out to me again and again and again because they just want to bother me with a question. So I always start from that approach, that if someone's reaching out to you with a question, with an email, with a call, it's because they're seeking an answer, they're seeking something, whether they're seeking knowledge or resource or something like that. So I always try to put myself in that other person's position, that, okay, this person is reaching out to me in good faith, they're not just trying to reach out to me because they're trying to annoy me or take up my time or anything like that. So again, practice the golden rule with charity or with communication, which is that whenever you do receive communication, respond and think about it in the most charitable fashion. So that is the first C, is charity. When you're responding, again, remain patient, because that person is really reaching out to you because they don't understand. And I would avoid being overly aggressive or even passive aggressive, at least on the first initial contact, because that person really does not understand. So you want to make sure that when you respond, you're trying to do so in the most charitable fashion. And when you're receiving that information, decide whether or not this is something that you should be calling them up to discuss, whether or not you should be emailing them, texting them. What is the proper platform? There's sometimes that, it's really quick to just send an email back to them because it's not a serious issue. It's sometimes better to respond and say, okay, this person is really upset or hurting or really needs support, so I need to schedule a call. But above all, always be positive and supportive. The next C is clarity. I believe Katie mentioned it in her presentation. We talked about it in other presentations and other communication, which is that clarity is kindness. Now, sometimes we'll get in the habit, myself included, that we'll use really flowery language. We want to make this communication sound so beautiful and so nice and so positive that we end up putting a lot of unnecessary words, making it longer than necessary, and it really can distract the receiver from the message. So really try to be as direct as possible. I know in our 9th grade first science class at one point, we were really going through the exercise of trying to use different ways to make our communication even clearer. So we want to try to really to emulate the way that you want to receive that message. So I would rather just have a straightforward yes, X, Y, Z, rather than kind of reading through all of these niceties and these flowery type of language. So get to the point and really also make sure that you're centering your message on what is most important. If you start adding, oh, by the way, someone emails you a curriculum question and you say, oh, by the way, did you know that we're having our parents' night out? I mean, just try not to put too many messages or too much communication when the topic should be really condensed to that one subject. Completeness, address every point. So this is something that I know some of our parents have a habit of doing. They will send us a page, 2-page, 3-page, 4-page long email, and they will have questions. Now at that point, you're gonna, again, use your prudence, just use it to context. Is this something where, you know what, I could actually call them into the office, schedule a meeting after the center begins, or maybe I set up a phone call with them and say, okay, let's just talk through this email. That way it helps them get all the information that they get, or that they need, and it also helps save you time from having to sit there and type out a 4-page response to them. And then also, one thing that if they do send you maybe a couple questions, I always try to do this is the order that you receive those questions, I respond to them. So some people will actually insert the answer after the question directly, or sometimes what I try to do is when I get maybe 3 questions in a row, I'll answer them in the order that the question was posed. So that way it just helps the reader, the recipient, but then also the sender to know that you have completely answered their email. One thing that I know both staff members and families feel frustrated alike is when they send 3 questions and you answer one of them. And then they have to go back and say, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And it just prolongs the communication, it takes up more time. And again, it's frustrating. I'm sure many of you as administrators have done that, where you ask a question and they might only answer it partially, or you need to go back, or then it ends up being a phone call. It just really can be an inefficient and ineffective way of communicating. So really try to make sure that by the end of that communication, by the end of that email thread, you have answered everything completely, and then ensure that there's a resolution. We talked about building trust with our families, and if you say that you're going to do something, then do it. So if you say, I'm going to get back to you in 24 hours with this answer, or I'm going to make sure that we have the retake in the retake folder on this date, like make sure it's done. And there's a couple tips that I would suggest using, whether or not you snooze the email, so that way it pops up and you can make sure, oh yes, I need to make sure I put that retake in the folder, or maybe you put a calendar note on your calendar that when I get in at the center, I need to make sure I've made copies for Mrs. Smith, or whatever tips work for you, but just make sure that there's clear resolution. So again, that's a way that we build trust with our families, with our staff members, but then also to make sure that it doesn't unnecessarily prolong the communication. If there's a question that you don't, or if there's a question or a conversation that you're having and you don't know the answer, it's totally fine to tell them, thank you so much for your email, I'm gonna look into this, and then get back to them. Like, it's much better for us to be getting those simple acknowledgements than to give them wrong answers. Because again, that is ways we really destroy trust, break down trust, but then also, again, it just prolongs the conversation much longer if you give them the wrong information and then you have to go back. It creates more work for everybody. This is also tied to clarity, which just be concise. Again, you don't need to add a lot of extra information that's not necessary to the conversation. Going back to clarity, there's ways be clear but still concise. Go through the exercise of, do I really need to add all of these extra adjectives and adverbs to make this sound really loud, or sound, really, really good in your opinion? You just want to try to be as concise, because people, we found, and we can look this data and studies up, everybody's attention span is much shorter these days. Sometimes they won't even scroll past the first part of the email. They only want to see those the top page that you can see on your screen. So I try to make it a point to limit my communication to no more than like 6 to 8 lines, just depending on what it is. Again, that's just my practice. Find something that works for you, but know that the recipient is not going to sit there and probably read through all of those details. And if it's something that the message is going to be really long, either send them a time to set up a call with you, or perhaps meet with them on campus to address all of the questions. So separate communications. Sometimes we'll get questions from families. Well, and you'll see this in your communications. Again, they're going to ask you about fundraising. They're going to ask you about curriculum. They're going to ask you about pickup times. They're going to ask you about basically everything possible in one email. And again, in order to be clear and concise, it's better to in that case, either set up a meeting or try to separate out the conversation. Again, if it's something that you can refer to someone else, or perhaps this is a time when you're going to need to order your email in a way that you're making sure you complete it. But when you're sending your communication, again, I would really suggest that it's just one topic. I know we all want to try to get in front of them as quickly and get all the information out, because we know that parents don't read email, we know that parents don't read Parent Square. It's a struggle, it's a continued struggle. But we have found that most families appreciate just shorter communications rather than some really long email that they have to respond to, because then they have to go back for that email rather than just searching in Parent Square, what day is pizza lunch, instead of having to read through a really, really long set of information before they get to the information that they seek. And again, correctness. Make sure that it's honest and truthful to the best of your knowledge. We don't want to give misinformation. We don't want to give incorrect answers. It's completely fine to delay your response in order to make sure that you give that information correctly. And sometimes you might have to double check yourself before you hit send. If you think you know the answer, I would say take a minute or two and go to the handbook and say, oh, right, I know that this is actually what I need to be saying. Or look at one of the email templates, or look at Drive and say, oh, I need to make sure that I double check myself. We've made several improvements in our processes, several improvements to our curriculum. So don't rely on your memory to make sure that don't rely on your memory that you're getting the right answer, because there has been quite a few updates. Again, great improvements, but we're not necessarily doing things the way that we did three years ago. So don't think that just because at that time it was right, that it might be necessarily correct this time. Proofreading, grammar, style, and content. So this is something that we've received feedback from families is you're educating our children and you have misspellings, you are using words in the wrong context, you're being too casual. Why should we trust our children to be educated by you if you don't understand the simple rules of grammar? So again, it's a little harsh, but at the same time, just remember, this is a professional communication. We are a professional organization. We're trying to instill confidence and trust in our families that yes, you can send your children to Regina Chaley and they will be well taken care of, both from an academic and a spiritual standpoint. So use correct grammar. Grammarly is free. There's a free version for Grammarly. You're welcome to use that if you want. Use spell check or any of those other tools. And again, really try to reread what you're sending before you hit send, just because sometimes we'll get typing really quickly and we might make an error that we're not even aware of. Okay, so the top part is the text, okay? So we receive, again, so much communication. I am sure that you've all experienced, or you will experience, that if families want to get a hold of you, they are going to text you, they're going to call you, they're going to email you, they're going to Facebook Messenger you, they're going to signal you, that they might set up a call with you on a various platform. I mean, if
Parent
we
Square's not
have
here.
families.
Parent Square's not even.
Oh, and Parent Square, yes, and then they'll DM you through Parent Square, yes. So we're just constantly getting information from all different platforms. I mean, sometimes my phone will have notifications from 6 different platforms, and I can't even know where these messages, I don't even know where these messages are coming from. So choose the right format. Again, we try to discourage long text threads. Who can tell me why long text threads are ineffective for parent communication? Craig?
They're not formal. They could miss a lot of information. They're typically very casual, which can be misread. This is not probably the best way for a long conversation.
Right, exactly. I'm sorry, I should be bringing the microphone. The people on live stream are going to be upset with me. Okay. Oh, you have the other microphone? Thank you. Would you mind, Craig, just repeating what you said?
Yes. Texting, from what I understand, it's not formal. A lot of information could be missed. A lot of information could be misread. I think when texting first came up, I'm telling you how old I am, it was never intended for anything to be formal at all. And I think it still tends to be that way. It's not probably the best thing for something formal.
Right, exactly. Angela, did you have something?
Also, depending on the settings of your phone, it may autocorrect very easily to something that you completely did not intend to say.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
in fact, the opposite of what you were trying to say. But then also, I think that especially if families have lots of children, you start reading a text and then like somebody gashes their head open, or something like there's an urgent need and you have to put it down, attend to, and then like you only read half of it, you didn't read the whole thing, and so you get like you conclude an error.
Right, no, both, yes, go ahead, Sally.
I was just gonna say, it's not archivable like that. You read half of it and then you forget about it and 5 more messages come, it's gone.
Right, no, exactly. I mean, there's been so many times when I thought I answered a text and then I only started it halfway or I imagined it. So it's very hard to have a really substantive conversation. Go ahead, Natalie.
There's also no boundaries, so they can just text you and just wait for you to just reply there and then. There's no boundaries. Once you send that text message and you reply, they're going to expect future messages to just come right there as well.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up, Natalie. That's exactly right, because again, most of us are homeschooling in the morning, and we want to protect that time. So if a parent thinks that they can give you one text to answer, where are my children's lesson plans? Little Johnny wants to do a makeup on Thursday. Whatever the case may be, if they think they can give you one text, then they're going to start trying to communicate with you primarily over text. So we want to protect your homeschool time. I mean, I personally had to make a conscious effort to put my phone in a different room when I'm homeschooling, because there's such a temptation if it's next to me to just, oh, you can't make email. And then my child's reciting the Baltimore Catechism and wondering why I'm not paying attention. So I would really encourage you to, put your phone away. Everybody knows that your work hours are XYZ time. And if it's really that important, then one, they should have planned better, but they can text you and say, I need to talk to you as soon as you come online. And so that way, and that's something too, that if you're at a doctor's appointment, or if you need to respond quickly, just say, it's not my work hours right now, I'll call you during the work hours or something like that. So that way you can move to a better form of communication. I'm not saying text is horrible or bad, I'm just saying when you need to have those type of conversations, text is not effective. Margaret?
Maybe I'm really naive, but how do they get your number? Do we have to figure our numbers out?
Well, so everybody has a center number. So Harrisburg, for instance, will have a center number. You don't have to give your personal cell phone number out, it's completely up to you. But you will have a Mighty Call line that's attached to your phone, so that way parents can reach you. But again,
That's not your phone, so you can just.
it is your
It's
phone.
coming through, like, it's not your number. You
Correct,
just-
correct.
Okay.
You will have friends in the center. I'm sorry, that didn't mean professional communication. I'm sorry, that came across wrong, but, and that's what this whole thing's about. But you do have people who know you otherwise and will have your number anyway, like your actual real friends who will, and then they're gonna, and so you'll have like your text string where you're sending each other funny animated GIFs, and then they'll say, oh, by the way, when is that, professional development presentation or whatever? That's kind of mixed in with the thing. And so you'll probably end up talking about this, but just like, or, I've had, families send me a parent square thing and say, when is the tuition bill gonna be due? And I love this thing, it's like email admissions, right? And here's the email address. And just a quick one, but a lot of times they'll say, I had this over the summer, people calling me and saying stuff, where job moved or whatever, hey, we want to withdraw. You need to email me that. And then I'll just say, you have to email me that. And then that kind of sets the tone. But they do get your number, I do give it out, because people text me that they're going to be sick.
Can I say something really quickly? Really quick? Can I say something?
Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, wait, look, real quick, Georgia wants to chime in.
I don't know if anyone else has ever had this happen, but I also have had parents communicate questions to me through their kid to my kid. So like my kid will come and say, so-and-so wants to know this about because I'm their science teacher or whatever. I'm like, no. You need to have the parents do it. So just tell your kids, no, you don't take questions on my behalf.
No, that's a great comment.
I've had that happen to me. I'm fairly good at this. Benedict does not work for us, he should not be. Okay, Jennifer? Oh, you got an answer, okay, great. Oh, yes, please do this.
I have this is not, I'll really throw my voice. So live streaming here.
It won't work.
I do have an in. I was a cheerleader once.
This is, I can't remember what the original name was, but this came into my head about text messages, and maybe let's try to not super much. But it's really rough when people can get a little casual, right, in text message, and when things go south, which sometimes they do through text message, and you have to have that documentation of that. Oh boy, is it a pain to have to screenshot. Scroll, screenshot, scroll, screenshot, scroll, screenshot, and then send he or she 23 screenshots of something that wants out. And so just to save yourself time, that's
Keep going.
Since we're a little short on time, I'm going to just flip through some of these. But this is just an example of again, texting. It really is better for short, non-urgent messages. But again, don't expect a reply outside of office hours. And like you're saying, Katie, work texts are still that. They're still work texts. So if someone's trying to circumvent, going through the proper channels of support, or they're trying to, perhaps make this try to get you on their side about a particular position or something like that, that they're trying to take. You really need to make sure that you know that you're the professional here and that they really can't try to get the answer that they want by trying to, going through a text or something in a more casual format. And I'm sorry, again, I'm really trying to fly through this. I'm gonna put this presentation in the admin training folder, so you all will be able to see it if you like. Email tips. So, again, sometimes we'll need to proofread our email before we send it. I mean, not sometimes, I would encourage you always to proofread it before you send it, but how many of you have had perhaps the time when you started typing something and you had already addressed it and you put the subject line in, and by the time you're done typing it, it's actually needs to go to someone else and it needs to copy someone and maybe the subject's completely different than what you put it in. So we've also had some accidental people, or again, totally unintentional, sometimes when emails have been sent out because people are in the subject or people are in the recipient line that really don't need to be copied on it. So leave the email unaddressed until it's ready to send. The subject line, you could also leave that blank until you're done with email or you're done typing up the message so that it contains the key words. One thing that I found, and if you can hit it again,
Keep
we
going.
already talked about quite a bit of this, but you don't need to have some extremely long opening, some extremely long conclusion. We're not writing an essay here, we're writing an email. So video calls, when do I schedule a call? Again, you need to, this is when your prudence comes into play. Is this something where we're gonna need to have more of a two-way conversation, where it's not just information going in one direction? Is this something that is very sensitive and I need to be having in person as opposed to a written email? When we're having video calls, and I know this is definitely one of Nikki Richards' goal when she's having our monthly CCE and CCO calls, is really trying to be very respectful of everyone's time by setting the agenda ahead of time and just sticking to that time frame and that agenda. And we can do that with our parents too. Sometimes they want to get you on the phone or they want to get you on the video call, and whatever the topic is, they might sometimes try to hijack it and say, oh, well, while I have you on the phone, let me ask you about this and this and this and this and this. But say, no, you have the right to say, we're supposed to be talking about this right now, let's stick to this, I only have 30 minutes. Sometimes I'll even begin the call, say, I have a hard stop in 30 minutes. So let's make sure, run through this agenda. If we need to talk about another topic, we can schedule another call or another meeting. And you also have the right to ask the parents, sometimes we'll get that, I need to talk to you. Okay, well, about what? You have the right to ask the parents and a staff member, can you send me what you would like to discuss so that I'm better prepared? Because sometimes I know where a resource is and I can say, oh, you know what, we don't even need to have a call. Here's that resource, here you go. Or here's that information, or let me resend you the email. I'm sorry, I went a little overboard with this. So.
It's pretty lovely.
Okay, some of these are more personal pet peeves, but I think that they also help our communication be effective if you can avoid these type of things. So again, those extra adverbs and words that are just very vague. I mean, if I'm getting an email and someone says, probably, I mean, that doesn't leave me with any resolution. Probably, I don't know. Is it gonna happen? Is it not? I don't know. So let's try to avoid those extra adverbs. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
So, one thing is, I'll try to, again, that doesn't leave a lot of resolution in my mind. I'll try to, again, are you going to or are you not? Just give me an answer one way or another. I think my guess is that doesn't instill a lot of confidence with the receiver of the message. I mean, my guess, or I think, again, I don't know. I mean, should I rely on this information? Should I not rely on this information? It's sort of a toss-up. And one thing that I didn't put on this, but one thing that I want to just bring up very briefly that Karen brought up yesterday was saying, well, I think this, but I'm copying my supervisor to tell me if I'm correct. I cannot tell you how many times this has happened. But one, again, it undermines your authority as an admin. Because then they're thinking, well, if she doesn't know, but her supervisor knows, then why don't I just go talk to her supervisor next time? Because she doesn't know obviously what she's doing. The second point, does, not saying you all, but does this person, if this person is wrong, do they really want to be corrected in front of someone? I mean, would any of you appreciate the supervisor saying, no, you know what, you're totally wrong? It's something that can really undermine and break down that trust, that reliability that families are seeking from you all. So, last point, it really breaks down the disunity of the national leadership team with the admins. Because then people are seeing, again, okay, this person thinks it's this way, but if the supervisor comes back, oh, it's, big bad NLT putting their, inserting yielding their power here and saying, no, you're wrong. We're one team. So I exist to support you all exist to support the organization. So we need to be working in harmony, consistently, clearly communicating that. So if you say something, I'm not going to go back to that parent and say, you know what, Mrs. Admin had that completely wrong. Don't listen to her. Don't trust her. Like, she is completely, we need to get rid of her. Okay? I would say, ideally, that person has come to me and said, you know what, we discussed it, and there was a clarification that we needed to have internally, and this is what we decided upon, or this is what the answer is. Again, we want to show that we are all one. So rules for replying, again, to just avoid the way that our parents will try to get a hold of us, and it says this in our employee handbook, we try to reply within 1 or 2 business days, even if it's an acknowledgement. I received your message, I'm working on it, I'll get back to you as soon as I have an answer. Copy and loop in your supervisor for all formal communications. Again, the NLT, the regional managers who are being copied on your emails, it's just the best standard to help support you. Now, that doesn't mean that if you write back, thank you, that you need to copy us in. I mean, again, use your prudence. We don't need extra emails necessarily. But if this is a conversation that you know is going to be ongoing, or perhaps a red flag, or continues to rear, to continue to come up again, then copy your supervisor. Again, we're here to support all of you. And if you wish to refer communication, connect the relevant parties. So again, what Brian mentioned about, you're not necessarily going to have all the answers. So say, okay, well, you know what, I don't have that, you don't have to say I don't have that answer, but it's better if you just contact the business office, or it's that, go ahead and contact HR about that. Tell them where to go so that they know you don't have the answer and they're not expecting the answer from you, but they have a place where they can go to get the answer. If it's inappropriate, consult a supervisor. Again, we've received those hot emails where everything's bolded and capitalized and just really heated and emotional. You can tell it's coming from a place that's very sensitive. So before you get upset and perhaps fire off one of those emails yourself, take some time to talk to your supervisor and use your prudence. Is this something that I really should invite them into the office so we can talk about this, rather than getting into a heated email exchange that never ends good. And then only reply all if all parties require the given information. So sometimes you'll notice that multiple people are on a string. It starts off talking about, the All Saints party, and then all of a sudden, all these other people are added. You don't necessarily need to keep saying reply all if you know that this person really doesn't need this information. But again, that's where your prudence comes into play. Playing phone tag, instead of just calling people up and going back and forth. We have those schedulers now that we use often for family interviews. You can put that in your signature line, or you can just add, propose a few different times that works well for your schedule. Okay, well, this is just a little bit of a reminder again about being passive aggressive, and just try to be as charitable as possible. Now, what to do when the person, the family member, has perhaps emailed you 3 different times with the same question. I know that gets to a point where that you might need to use a little bit firmer language, or you might need to have a call with that person and say, you've asked me 3 times now. How can I help you get this information? And maybe it's something that they need to bookmark, or maybe it's something that they don't know how to get back in the parent square, or something like that. Try to remain as charitable as possible, but then also there are times where we might need to be a little bit firmer in our language and our approach in order to stop the repeated questions about the same issue over and over and over again. Avoid using first person plural. If you need someone to do something, call them by name. Mrs. Smith, can you do X, Y, Z? Don't just say, can you all, or can we all, because then the person isn't sure. Am I supposed to do this? Are you supposed to do this? Is someone copied on the email supposed to do this? Never copy, we talked a little bit about this too, instead of, copying in the supervisor, that's when you need to talk to your supervisor and say, this tutor is attacking me, and we need to really try to figure out a way to de-escalate the situation. Okay, communicating RCA standards. One thing that we've really tried to focus on in the past few years is explaining the why behind what we do. I think Angela mentioned too that, sometimes she doesn't necessarily understand the reason why a policy exists or why a standard exists. So we really want to try to help educate our families. And if none of you are sure, or if you're not sure about something, please ask, because there is a reason. I guarantee you there's a reason. Now, will you agree with that reason? I can't guarantee that. But we do want to make sure that we're giving you the reason why something is in place. And that's how we build unity, is if everyone understands the reason. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean everyone's going to agree. It's just like you and your spouse, or you and your family member. You're not always going to necessarily agree. And there is going to be a point where someone has to make a decision. But at the same time, we really want to help instill trust in our families by giving them the reason why a standard exists. And we can do some of that by just changing the way we're approaching the way we talk about policies and rules. I mean, some people, again, especially if you're over on this side of the spectrum, like they hear a policy or a rule or restriction, and some people just say, you know what, I'm not a rule follower, so I'm just gonna ignore them. But if we explain that, no, this is a standard, we want to elevate, okay? We don't want to oppress and bring down people. This is, again, not a dictatorship. We want to really help people understand why we have these standards. So talk about media standards. It's not a ban on television, but it's just really a way to defer to the parent as a primary educator, as a primary decision maker, and really help us focus what we're doing in a very intentional way when we're on campus. The dress code, modesty standards, again, it's not because we're fixated on what people are wearing, but it's just a way to help really unify the community. Our new academic standards is not to make students' lives inflexible or take grading away, but it's just to help everybody have better accountability, to grow in discipline and structure that those students are going to need in their later life. And I'd also avoid the pitfall, I think there's one, is there one more? No.
Just the group, we're not doing that.
No, we're not going to. I avoid the pitfall of getting into necessarily an argument with people when they throw out an extreme. Well, these academic policies, if my child needs to miss for a funeral for her grandma, you're gonna make us make this up or do whatever. I mean, that's not even logical, okay? That's where the abortion argument fails over and over. But we wanna make sure that the families understand that these policies, these standards exist to help bring us together and are all for the betterment of our community and our children. So we really want to, again, elevate and help them meet those standards, rise up to meet those standards. So using that positive language and changing our verbiage a little bit can go a long way in addition to giving them the why. So never feel like you should have to apologize for taking time to explain to families about those standards. Okay, so we're not gonna have time to do some of the scenarios, I can send those out too, but basically they were just exercises in examples of situations, communications, some emails that we've gotten, examples of situations, talking about, is this a time when we should be using an email format, text format, meeting format, just some different scenarios there. So we're gonna go right into our next session. So if